Welcome to the podcast from the Fabian Society Meritocracy Debate on the 1st of July, held in the House of Commons. The speakers were David Blunkett, David Lammy, Stella Creasy and Austin Mitchell.
We've got a debate about class in 2008, about class in Britain under the new government. I'll introduce Stella Creasy when she arrives. On my right I've got David Lammy, who's MP for Tottenham and is Minister at the new Department for Innovation, Universities and Skills. On my left is David Blunkett, I'm sure you all know as well, MP for Sheffield Brightside. Home Secretary, was Secretary of State for Education, Secretary of State for the DWP, and Austin Mitchell, who is on the Fabian Executive and MP for Creasy. Just to kind of start off, what I'd like to do, I think, is ask all the members of the panel, we can ask Stella when she comes, two quick questions. One is, has class become more or less important in the UK over the last 10 years? And secondly, the fun one is what class are you? Those Blunkett we start off with.
I think the difficulty with the Labour Party has been that we don't actually want to be seen to be going back to days of class war. I mean, the reaction in Crewe and Nantwich was not a good one. On the other hand, we haven't come to terms with the fact that we've still a long way to go. I remember it when I was in the Home Office and the Queen Mother died, and you actually saw a living example of how there's a different class just bubbling away under the surface still there, because they said to me, we've been in touch with the Palace and the Home Secretary was going to be asked to sit there, but they've designated the speech for the King of Yugoslavia. And my office said that there is no King of Yugoslavia. And they said, well, there might not be actually one living there, but we recognise the King of Yugoslavia. And the world hasn't changed very much at all. And the whole of the Queen Mother's funeral and all the arrangements around it were of a bygone era. But it did remind me of Michael Young's phrase, it is good sense to appoint individuals to jobs on their merit. It is the opposite when those are judged to have merit of a particular kind, hardened into a new social class without room in it for others.
David Lammy, the last 10 years is more than a story of restoring social mobility and worries about that echelon on there. What's your assessment?
Well, I think that class is still very firmly on the agenda. It's still very firmly with us. It's something that our party should be preoccupied with. As to what class I belong to, well, I've got to say, I suppose that I'm middle class, but I also say that I look forward to the day when I don't have to say I'm middle class, when class is not the big player it still seems to be in British society. And there are two things that strike me. One, I think it is legitimate for the Labour Party to have something to say about excess at the top of society. And for me, that isn't the politics of envy, and it was never been put as the politics of envy. I want people to be able to work hard, to make money, to do extremely well, to make millions. But I also want them to contribute, to give back. And so for me, it's the politics of civilization. It's the politics of humanity. It must never be put as the politics of envy. We need to ensure, this is my last point, that in a context in which in the past, in 1997, we would have said the key to improvement in our society is employment. We know now that there will always be people who clean this office. There will always be people who are arriving home at 6 in the morning and going to work at 11. There will always be hospital porters. So there will always be those low-income jobs. And if there will always be those low-income jobs, then what sort of society do we say in the Labour Party we want to create to support those families that will have those jobs? Not everyone can work in Canary Wharf. Not everyone is going to be on that progression to the biggest and best. We have to be able to talk about those, even many of them doing the most worthwhile things. You've got to have something to say about the value that they bring to society. And to my mind, it's those cluster of policies over the next few years that will be important to the Labour Party's renewal and important, I think, to the Fabians to have something to say particularly.
Often, where are we? It's nothing that the Labour Party just cannot tackle anymore. We can't mention, it can't be part of the narrative. So we have to talk about the tools we have instead, we have to talk about shortcuts and so on, or can we actually engage with that we have probably the poshest Tory front benches that have.
What's happened was that the identification, which I grew up in, and David grew up in, has been seriously undermined. We've destroyed the conditions and the conditioning process which made people working class or made people labour. We've destroyed the industries, particularly the big basic industries which employ the huge numbers. We've pulled down the neighbourhoods and moved people out. We've been subjecting them to a common culture and a common consumer culture through 40, 50 years of commercial television. Now the interesting thing is, I think that's affected party identification more than class identification, because it means that allegiances to the parties are looser because we've destroyed the conditioning process, but still people feel a residual sense of class. I think that weakening of the party allegiance, which you can see it everywhere, is what fooled New Labour into thinking that we had a new class paradigm to deal with.
George Bernard Shaw once said, he's quoted as saying, "I have a lot of friends in the working class, and I'm glad I'm a friend and not a member of it." And this is, and this is where I listen to his eloquence is so super and great and I agree with everything they said. But he never mentioned the word money and resources, fancy words, and things like that. But the word money is so important.
It's more about poverty of expectation, which goes with not having money, than it is the cash itself. But Paul, I have to see the same position as you, and had my mum not been the driving force, I wouldn't have done it either. I did actually say in my very short speech at the beginning that I did think that the lifestyle that I was able to live now because of what cash I had actually changed my class and changed where I was, and that is true. But what's changed my boys' progress in life more was my driving force to know, to have the confidence to know, that if they did well in education, they would succeed in life. So your mum and my mum, and I suspect yours as well, were much the same.
I'm very worried about, it's lovely to hear what people say at this panel, but I'm very worried about the language that actually comes from the government ministers. For example, I know, well, could you not have said something to Ed Balls about this 600 schools that are not reaching the 30% benchmark? Why is that presented as there are all these schools that are doing badly? That is not the point. The point is these are schools dealing with very difficult circumstances. 26 of them are academies anyway, and what he's going to do is put a whole lot of money in.
Right. Having as I'm more unpopular. First, I said we've got to prioritise short-term money. Second, I'm going to agree with David. I think it is absolutely right that we do not limit our ambitions for poor kids. I take your point that deprivation makes it difficult. But if we let deprivation dull our ambitions, then we condemn another generation of kids to do okay but not brilliant. And I want a Labour government to think kids can do brilliantly, because it's not about where you live, it's about where you go. That should be our operating principle. So the argument we need to be making is, yes, it makes it tougher teaching these environments, so these schools do need more resources. Now, I'll have the argument with you about the academies, because I know what you're saying about school admissions policy, but actually it is about how then special needs is interpreted. It's quite a technical issue. It's partly to do with how academies are being implemented. Again, these are new policies. These are new issues of our own creation. That should give us a heartening belief that we can change these debates, that we can actually change some of these issues that have appeared intractable, whether they be gender inequality or underachievement amongst poor children. children.